Y'all, if we could go on and get started. This thing working. It's just a little dab after 8. I appreciate everybody getting up early enough to get here, especially these on the committee. Some of them might have had a little late night last night, but we got a quorum anyway. There's some people came farther than we did to be here this morning. I appreciate that. Terry, would you mind blessing this place for the day?
I'll try my best. Let us pray. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this another day that you created. Lord, we thank you for all the many blessings that you give us, Lord. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of Georgia. Lord, we just ask that you be with us as we go through this meeting. The questions that we've asked, be thoughtful. Lord, the decisions that we that we make would be those that you'd be pleased with. I ask you to forgive us our many sins. Be your will. For in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Committee members, if y'all will notice in your book, there's a list, a new subcommittee list. We created another subcommittee. I called it a special subcommittee on food safety, and then the lawyers got a hold to it, and it turned into a name about 3 feet longer than that. So anyway, it's all the same thing. Representative Levitas and Maddox are co-chairing it, and one of the reasons is you know, I'm so sick of hearing about unsafe peanuts till I don't know what to do, and I'm worried about the peanut industry in the state. I'm worried about peanut farmers, and as of Friday, there was 1,555 recalled products. Yesterday, there was 1,840 recalled products, and I checked a while ago, there's 1,914 recalled products. And that's kind of the genesis, and along with a lot of other stuff, of this special subcommittee. And they've been working pretty hard over the last 3 days, and I appreciate them doing that and getting rolling. But we have got to get a handle on this peanut issue, and we have got to somehow reassure people that peanut products are safe, and before it ruins the peanut farmers, the peanut industry, and the manufacturing industry in this state. And part of that is what they are looking into. The other thing for the committee members, Monday was 4-H day. We wasn't here. Bo Riles and some of the 4-H people brought a green bag with a book in it on the history of 4-H for all the committee members, so y'all don't leave without getting one. It's a real good book. Does anybody else have anything? All right, today we're going to have a hearing on House Bill 263. Representative Peake, you have some testimony, and then we have a couple of people want to talk about it too, so it's yours.
Question the wisdom of the committee of having the representative from DeKalb County on the Ag Committee, but yeah, I bet you do. I'm sure you do. I guess he's here for humor and keep the meeting lively. Thank you so much, Chairman McCall and members of the committee. I appreciate you allowing us to come before you with HB 263. Before we get started, I wanted to I have Amy Scott with me here. I'll introduce her a little further in just a minute. I want, as we discuss this bill, if you'll bear with me, just to imagine a series of events, if you will, with me. Imagine today that, as may happen many times as we're up here serving the legislature, your spouse or in my case, my 22-year-old daughter may call and say, "Dad, the dishwasher doesn't work. I'm up here in Atlanta. I can't come fix it. I can't fix anything anyway." But so I tell you what, I've heard about ABC Appliance Repair Service. Why don't you call them? We've used them before, and ask them to see if they can come take care of the dishwasher today. And so I'm up here in Atlanta, and my spouse or your daughter who might be at home, whoever, contacts a vendor, and they schedule a time to come out at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And your daughter or your spouse is going to meet them so they can get inside the house and take care of the dishwasher. So that's a typical scenario many of us have to deal with, asking a vendor, outside vendor, to come inside our home, meet someone of our family there so they can get in. And pretty common occurrence. Well, let's say that's supposed to happen about 1 o'clock, and today, during chambers or right after session, you start chatting with one of your colleagues who is from around that area as well too, and you tell them about your dishwasher problem, and you tell them, yeah, well, I'm going to hire ABC appliance repair. They're coming out, and they come out there, and your colleague, your friend from that district, says, man, I'm not sure I'd use that group. I heard, and just I knew somebody that had done some business with them, that they had hired somebody who had a criminal background, who had been in prison for aggravated assault and robbery and voluntary manslaughter. Okay, so you're up here at the Capitol. You got somebody that potentially could be coming into your home to meet your daughter or your spouse, to do service in your home, who has a criminal past. Does that change your mindset a little bit of, well, maybe I need to get my butt home real quick? We'll take it a step further, if you'll bear with me. And I imagine that if at 3 o'clock you got a phone call from the next door neighbor or your parents saying, I'm sorry to tell you, but your spouse, your daughter, has been brutally assaulted and raped by the individual that was coming to fix your dishwasher. And as you find out more details, you find out that this individual indeed did have a criminal background. Now, I know the first thought of many of you, and is mine when I hear that, is, well, I'm going to be the one end up in jail because I'm going to take care of the fella. Well, the motivation behind this bill and the legislation, which would require a background check on anyone who provides an in-home service, is this type of story. Amy Scott, who is a constituent of mine from Macon, endured this horror, and she is here today to share her story at the indulgence of the committee, if that's okay, and share her testimony. We brought this bill not because any lobbyist or background check company asking us to. We're doing this because of personal experience of a constituent. And if you'll bear with us, we'd like to share your story. So I introduce you, Amy Scott. If you'll.
Can you guys hear me? Good morning. Thank you all very much for allowing me to share a little glimpse of how this got before you this morning. I moved to Georgia in October of 2006 and have thoroughly enjoyed being a member of the community in Macon and of the state of Georgia. I'll take you back to whenever you move in a neighborhood. It was a nice neighborhood, only 2 streets. I got a referral to hire someone to help me clean my home. I have 3 children, ranging from 3 to 10 years old, and have a full-time job and career, and needed that sort of help. So took a referral from our neighbor, and this cleaning company came very highly recommended, and ultimately, as of May 1st of this year, we're cleaning probably 40% of the homes in our neighborhood. So you constantly saw the truck there with the logo, individuals with the uniforms which they wore. And whenever I employed the service, I asked, are you insured? And do you do background checks on your employees? And to see that, you don't bring anyone in this home, in anyone's home that would have the intent to harm someone. I trusted this individual, as did everyone that employed their services. On May 1st, it was a Thursday, they had actually been in the home of my neighbor 2 doors up the street. They weren't scheduled to be in my home till Friday. They cleaned my home every Friday for approximately 2.5 years or so. Since my children were born, being a working mom, I've always hired someone to come in the house and keep my children. A sitter, you might call them a nanny, but they end up being a part of your household, someone you love and care about. They take care of your kids, the things that are most precious to you. And a young lady had been working with me for probably 1.5 years at the time. And she was there with my 3-year-old daughter. And the individual that happened to be the one that did clean my house, there were several people on their crew, but every Friday this particular individual, who is now incarcerated in the Bibb County Jail, came to my house and knocked on the door. And she answered the door. He asked to use the phone to call the owner of the cleaning company. She turned around to get the phone, and he proceeded to beat her, and to the point of he took her to another area of the house upstairs. Ultimately, the intent was to have her call my 3-year-old daughter upstairs, and she was able to fight him away, call my daughter upstairs, and then distract him and run back downstairs, where she ultimately almost escaped the home. My daughter stayed upstairs for that period of time, and that is when he brutally assaulted her and held her at knife point. Once that part of the ordeal was over, he sent her upstairs to get my daughter, which now we know my daughter didn't exactly stay where she was supposed to. Through the therapy we've been through, we've seen that, hopefully she did, but she knew that her life was in danger at the time due to his threats to kill them and everything. So he sent her upstairs to get my daughter, and he was taking them with him. And fortunately, he did not follow her to the top of the stairs. She grabbed her cell phone out of her purse. She had already had it on her arm because he told her she was going to have to go to the ATM and get him some money. But she was able to hide in my daughter's closet and dial 911 and stayed there. She didn't know if he was outside the door. He was continually threatening her, threatening their lives and the lives of all of us in the family, that he was waiting till we all got home. I was on my way home to kill us all. Once the Sheriff's Department had completed their initial investigation that afternoon, the owner of the company acknowledged to more than one of us in the neighborhood, not to me, but to more than one of us in the neighborhood, that he indeed knew that this individual had a violent background. Some of the people that are close to me actually went online and checked and found out that he served 10 years for voluntary manslaughter. He had been arrested for 4 other violent crimes. I think the total was 16 charges total. There's 6 or 8 charges associated with what occurred at my home. My daughter and my sitter have undergone tremendous amounts of therapy, and in order to try to, get over this, is something they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives, as will we all will, but they experienced it that day. As a mother and as a friend and an employer, you get to the point where you feel hopeless. You want to fix it. You've had a sick child and you just want to fix it and put a Band-Aid and take the pain away. Well, there's no way in this situation that'll ever happen. So I came up with an idea to do something, and contacted Representative Peake, and if I could prevent this from happening to one other person, whether they're 3 years old or 33, by simply preventing someone that's got that sort of violent background from working in what is our sanctuary, if you are violated in your own home, the place where you play with your baby dolls, where Christmas tree is, how does that make you feel secure in the world we live in? And if one measure could prevent that, I think it's important And I appreciate you all taking the time to see if it's something that we can take a step further. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As you can see, the motivation behind this is compelling. Why I was so interested in presenting this bill and to this committee. I understand the scope of what we're looking at here. Anybody that would come in the home would be required to have a background check. I understand the vast amount of folks that would include and the responsibility that would put on business owners, of which I'm one, a small business owner, to pay for a background check. It's anywhere from $14 to $22 is the cost of a background check. It is. I have gotten lots of good input from various groups up here at the Capitol and open to any suggestions of how to narrow the scope so that we're making sure we're dealing with the bad guys and protecting our citizens. And I'm going to let you have any questions, Mr. Chairman. Anybody have any questions?
First of all, thank you for being here. I mean, I know that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, and I know I speak for the entire committee when we tell you how sorry we are that you have to be here. But we appreciate your willingness to be up here to try and turn something very negative into something positive and try and draw some solace from that. Representative Peake, if you don't mind, I do have a couple of questions for you. Can you tell me what 10-1-932 is? I'm assuming that's some kind of qualification for...
It is. We had started out the original bill with kind of qualifying it as anybody who was convicted of a felony or a moral turpitude, and it just became difficult to, you're dealing with guys who maybe have passed 3 bad checks or had a couple of DUIs. So what we did is we narrowed in on the 7.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking I'm sorry to interrupt, but in 10-1-931.
Yeah, it's on the next page. Actually, that's why if you go to 10-1-932 is described.
Okay. You're right. Now I'm sorry, and I did have a question about that too. And I'm glad that you included what we often refer to in the prosecution circles as 7 deadlies. Right. But I'm wondering why we wouldn't want to add something like child molestation, whether it's aggravated or not, and possibly even enticing a child.
We tried to zero in on the bad ones, and I'm open to suggestion. We just felt like we need to enumerate the specific charges. If we've missed something, please help.
Well, we've got aggravated child molestation. I don't see, and maybe I'm missing it, I don't see regular child molestation. Aggravated involves violence. It's usually a more serious, but I wouldn't want somebody who's been convicted of child molestation in my house either. And I'd certainly defer to the will of the committee on that. And we may be going a little too far, but enticing a child for indecent purposes, again, if it's somebody coming into my home, I know if they've been convicted of child molestation, I don't want them anywhere near my house. And there may be some other ones. That was just my only question. And as far as just a technical suggestions, throughout the bill, you use the terms offered or provided, but in 930 you just had offered, and I would just suggest as a friendly amendment adding or provided after the word offered.
Representative Vitz, those are all good suggestions, and the scope of what would preclude someone from being employed to provide these in-home services, I'm open to suggestion.
And I'm not trying to, I hope you understand, I'm only trying to help. I certainly don't want to put anything in the bill that's going to prevent it from passing, but I would hope that nobody in the legislature has any problem with adding regular child molestation to that list of offense. I can't imagine that swaying a vote from for to against.
We'd be more glad to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I know I've asked a lot of questions. May I ask just one more, and I promise to move on? The fewer than 10 years, I mean, we make people sign up for a sex registry forever. Why only 10 years?
Well, we got a lot of feedback from folks regarding the bill of boy, you're penalizing somebody that's paid their dues, they've been rehabilitated, they've paid their debt to society for the crime that they committed, and so and you're barring them from ever pursuing their livelihood again. And so we felt like that, okay, if someone has been employed with a business for a period of 10 years and has at least given a good track record that they have been rehabilitated, that there should be some merit and validity to that. So that was the reasoning behind it.
Well, I thank you for bringing the bill. It's an excellent idea.
Well, it's civil penalties, so it'd be fines and the ability to be able to be sued, but there's no criminal penalties at this point.
One of the scenarios I envision, I've got family job construction. I've got some family property.
There you go.
I've got a red light now. Maybe you can hear now. At any rate, there's a lot of people in construction business that won't think about doing repair or home improvement type work during regular times. These ain't regular times. Those guys right now, they'll do anywhere they go anywhere they can to drive a nail. And all of a sudden, he's got a crew. He's been working. He ain't thought about doing a background check on these folks. And he's just trying to hold his company together. Think about how this might impact.
That would impact them, yes, sir. They would be required to seek a background check on employees that would be entering the home. Representative Black, what we try to zero in on is it's not a material cost. I know any additional cost of businesses is not good, but they're as low as $13 to $14 to $21 to $22 that you can get these background checks. So if he had a crew of 4 or 5, it's going to cost him $100 probably to go do background checks on all his employees. My counter to you is the small cost of doing that to protect the citizens of our state is worth it. And so while it may be an additional small burden to the small business, benefit and the security that's provided to the individuals whose homes they're going to come into is worth the cost benefit. What's that cost?
Well, I'm with you 100% on people that are operating a business, just like you mentioned appliance repair, where they are sending folks out individually. Now, it's one thing sending a crew out to work, but you send an individual out, and this is the normal course of their business. But I see a broad net here that when you've got a penalty for someone just for violating the act, not maybe they do anything, but they just haven't done background checks on a crew that they normally wouldn't be required to, but they just happen to wade into a little project that they're going to be working in someone's home.
Again, I understand the concern, and I have that concern too, and I'm interested in whatever suggestions the committee might have on narrowing the scope. Again, the attempt is to get the bad guys, make sure they're not coming in the home.
I don't believe anybody's going to defend the bad guys. I just have some questions about creating more bureaucracy, more regulations to put on people that it's just like you send a crew out to work, it's entirely different than sending one individual out. That type of thing.
And I appreciate your concern. I'll be open to suggestions of how to narrow the scope.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Peake, I applaud you for what you're trying to do here, and but I've got a few questions. One is this bill as it's drafted now, Mary Kay, those types of individuals, Tupperware salesmen, and all that come into the homes, that come in for parties and all, under this legislation, all of them would have to have background checks, correct?
Well, I'm checking with legislative counsel because it's a valid question that got raised earlier, and the bill addresses specifically that you shall not employ, a business shall not employ an individual who has committed these felonies. For a sole proprietor or independent contractor by themselves, technically the way the bill reads, they would have to do a background check on themselves. And so Wayne has been helping me with some language that would help address that specific issue, and I think that we're going to get there, because that is a valid concern. You got Avon, you got
Right.
You got folks like that, and who are just independent contractors, and so that's a valid concern that we're addressing.
Now, another question, Mr. Chairman. But now, if they have somebody that's helping them, according to this bill, they have to do a background check on them.
If they have an employee, they would be required to do a background check, and if the background check shows a felony of these crimes, then they would not be allowed to enter the home. That's correct.
And the man that entered the home, didn't I hear you say that his boss knew that he was a convicted felon? Okay.
And actually, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, actually communicated to folks that he had done a background check, but he had not.
So he implied that he had done a background check when he actually had not. Well, how do you know how he knew of his prior convictions?
I'm not sure. His comment was good help's hard to find.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Peake, if this bill passes, and I think it should, it's a great, great bill and it's needed. What kind of time schedule would we be talking about once it goes into law for the employer to get this work done?
What we're looking at, Dr. Maddox, Representative Maddox, is that we would set a date of as of September 1st that it's on actually line 19 and 20, any business providing in-home service would have until September 1st to get a background check, and actually give them until December 1st to provide evidence to perform the background check on the employees that they have at that point. So we're going to give them 90 days once the bill were to go into effect to be able to get the background check done. Any new hire they would have after that subsequent would be subject to the background check. Yes, sir.
You got another? Yeah. Okay.
Representative Peake, one more question. In the 90 days, I mean, do you feel like, and I go back to companies like Georgia Power and all these companies, maybe your telephone companies, your bigger telephone companies. Do you, and I don't know if they currently require background checks or do background checks on their employees, but do you think that 90 days is sufficient? I mean, if you've got a company that's got thousands of employees, does that give them an opportunity at that point to be able to come in compliance with this law?
Again, that's a great question. What we've done, and actually two amendments that we've already worked on with Wayne after getting feedback from AT&T and Comcast and some of those big providers, is that anyone who has already performed a background check on an employee is not required to go do it again. A lot of those companies, they'll tell you, and I think they'll testify here shortly, that they already do that. It's a standard practice, and it's a best practice to provide background check. And so the large businesses, you would think, okay, well, they're going to have to go do 1,000 background checks. Well, most of them are already done.
Okay.
And so we'll include in the bill that they're exempt from that. Let me also address the real estate folks. I think Keith Hatcher may be here and talking about the real estate folks, because that was a concern. There are some businesses that, as a result of licensure, through the licensure process, are required to do a background check. And so our intent is to provide an amendment into this bill also that would say if a business has an employee who has already, as a result of licensure, has already had a background check, they would not be required to have to go do that again as well, too. So I hope that would address some of the questions. Good point.
I want to take one more question from Representative Maddox, and then we got, I know, one more person, and there's been some people drifting in. If anybody wants to talk, we're more than welcome to let you. I know there's some construction people, real estate, whoever else, but after Billy gets through, and is it one of these? I can say
And mints,
United Way.
And mints.
Mint. Okay. If you kind of ease up this way, and then is anybody else? Let me put that back down. But Billy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. scope is of great concern to me as well, and I was glad to hear you address that, Representative Peake, that you realize the magnitude and the potential scope of this bill and the impact that it could have. One of the questions that I was just curious is this particular employer in this situation. We've said that he had knowledge of this employee's criminal background. Has there been any action taken against that employer? I mean, I think there are some remedies out there, negligent hiring, negligent supervision, or maybe some causes of action that they might have.
Currently, I'm not aware. The individual that committed the crime, the latest date is February 23rd for that trial. I spoke with the district attorney yesterday. I'm not sure if we are awaiting that trial to take place and the testimony there before there are charges brought against him. He was individually sued by my babysitter, and the insurance company has already paid out in that situation the claim. So other than that lawsuit there, I know of no criminal action against the individual yet, which I agree with you it should be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much for coming, and don't go anywhere. There may be a couple of questions. My mind went blank. Yeah. United Way. Would you mind sitting right there where we can?
My name is Ann Mintz, and I'm representing United Way, and I want to recognize Ms. Scott and Representative Peake and the members of the committee. Do what? Okay. All right. Our concern is primarily for prisoner reentry programs. As you know, there's many offenses that are now considered felonies, and that ups the ante for how folks can get back on with their lives after they've exited prison. And we're very grateful to Representative Peake for recognizing that felony is an awfully wide scope in trying to narrow down exactly what we mean by who should not be in the home. One way that you might be able to blunt the effect of this on businesses would be to specify that the way this 10.1932 reads now, to me, it's as if you were a service or an organization that did many kinds of things, including an in-home service, you'd have to be screening everybody. But I think maybe you just want to narrow that down to just who is providing the in-home service.
Mr. Chairman, can I give a response to that? That is a great suggestion. We actually have an amendment that would actually read who in the course of such employment would enter a private home. So it would be, again, the scope would be narrowed to folks who are only entering home, not the secretary for the business, right, or clerk or right. Great suggestion.
But again, that it was our primary interest in it. We are so deeply moved by Ms. Scott's story, and we hope that never happens to anyone again.
Down under on line 18, it says background investigations, criminal background investigations, plural. Are they indicating by that it's a state and federal background check, or just a state background check?
The intent would, if you go online and attempt to do a criminal background, various amounts you can do, but what we're looking for is any state that they would have potentially had a felony or committed crime in. So,
but how do you do that?
Well, you could. You could select a specific scope of the investigation that you're looking for, and the ones that we've looked at have been anywhere from $14 to $22.
I'm not sure, but it may be because I'm not updated to the background checks. When I was here before, there was a big problem.
If you and Ms. Scott may can actually provide some testimony because I know she's done some background on it. It's on. If you can go in and select a background check that you would like that will cover
The Southeast.
Or any state that they would have had a felony that would show up on their record, and so that's all we're looking for is one criminal one background check. Again, it costs anywhere from $14 to $22.
And it will cover all 50 states.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And excuse me, Mr. Chairman, one question. I want to be clear because I have someone who comes and cleans my house for me every 2 weeks. Do I have to get her to do a background check?
If it's a sole proprietor or an individual by themselves,
I don't.
They don't have to perform a background check on themselves. If they have an employee.
Well, if her daughter comes in, sometimes they share it. They're not real. They're like they work together, but they're not an employer.
Well,
so what do I do in that situation?
Legal counsel, but I would believe they would be considered an employee and agent of the independent contractor, and so therefore they would be required to have a background.
And the Chinese delivery?
If they enter your home.
Well, if it's bitter cold, sometimes they enter the home before you get money. So then you're saying that all delivery people, food delivery people, would have to get background checks.
That is within the scope as we have it now. Again, I'm willing to take suggestions and address that. That is a potential safety hazard, though. It would be
yes, it is.
Pizza delivery guy is going to make darn sure that he doesn't.
Well, I mean, I think that the bill is a good bill. It's a great idea. I just don't know if it's possible.
Yeah. I understand the challenges we have on the scope, and again, I'm at the will of the committee and the pleasure of the committee. I'm willing to entertain any suggestions of how to narrow that scope, and we've gotten some from some of the folks who represent different constituencies here at the Capitol, and we've taken all of their suggestions and included them in the bill so far. So.
Representative Peake, again, this is a great bill, and it does meet a need. But I've got a little concern. In our rural area, we do have a lot of what Representative Dooley's talking about, just individuals who form their own little business to do house cleaning or sitting with elderly or those types of things. And the way I read the bill, to say no person shall offer or provide an in-home service unless such person and every employee. I would like to protect those little people who may not even know about the law and might get caught because they weren't aware that they had to do a background check basically on themselves. The legal counsel, are they assured that those people are protected?
Well, Wayne, you can jump in anytime, help me out if need to. That's okay. We're trying to deal with the practical realities of an individual who has their own business. Do they have to perform a background check on themselves to go to work? Well, the reality is that we would like to provide to our citizens. I believe the intent is that if I was hiring you to come clean my house, that I would be able to ask you, can you give me some type of background check? Can you give me some type of proof that you have not committed any crimes? I would think I would want to know that, and so it would give them the opportunity to ask that question. Now, how do we make it in the language so that it works on a practical standpoint? Again, I'm open to some suggestions, and I think legal counsel is going to help me with that as well.
Well, and you have said you're trying to fix the position on that, and I would appreciate it because I think it would I mean, some folks might not ask for that background check. If they don't ask and the person doesn't provide, then is that person guilty of violating the law? So if we can find some way to structure that, it would be appreciated.
And we're working on that, and Representative Harder, that's a great suggestion. We're going to get there, I hope. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the way of an anecdotal comment, I have a great fear of diluting this very, very powerful bill if we go too far in trying to cover everybody's feelings. Let me tell you, my mother is in an assisted living home, and she is demented. And the only way we could have her in that home is if we provided private, round-the-clock care to her. So we hired 2 ladies. And when the ladies came in, the assisted living home, and they were private people that we were paying them directly. And the assisted living home asked us if we would do background checks on them, because that was the policy of the assisted living home. We did a background check on those 2 ladies. One of them came out having assaulted elderly people in the past, and you would have never known it by talking to them. So I would be very cautious at reducing or eliminating some of the teeth that are in this bill, because when you least expect it, you will be surprised. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. Yes, sir. I will.
People from the Center for Working Families, whichever order y'all want to go in, if you just want to tell us your name and talk a little bit.
Can we kind of gather around together?
That'd be fine. However y'all want to do it. We don't get real uptight about how things work in here.
Good morning. How is everyone?
All right, ma'am.
My name is Huxley Wilkins, and I am the Vice President of Programs for the Center for Working Families. And we work very closely with the families that are in MPUV that surround the area around the stadium. I am here today to talk to you about some of the challenges that our individuals have. Many of the customers that we have that are working, that we see in MPUV, are working very desperately to overcome barriers of backgrounds. One of the things that we have found, one of the parts of our application process is that when people come in, we ask them if in fact they have a background, because what we try to do is move families to work, to wealth, or to entrepreneurship. We screen all of the families that come in and ask all of the adults and most of the older youth, persons 18 to 21 also, and ask them if they have a criminal history. 82% of the people that we serve, that we ask if they have had a criminal history, do. One of the things that we have on staff is a legal advocate, and when we pull those background histories, I can tell you that probably 30% of them have gross inaccuracies. There are cases that have not been litigated that are still showing as open. There are cases that are someone else's that are on their records that don't belong to them, and we work with our partners to try to rectify these records before we start to send someone out. One of our major concerns is that if in fact the population at large, like our customers, were to go out and see an employer and the employer run a background check with some of the inadequacies in the system that preclude the cleaning up of records before they actually before people actually know what's on them, a lot of people will be screened out. I didn't see anything on there that talks about people that use false IDs. Sometimes when individuals are picked up, they will use someone else's name or social security number, and they will have things on their have a record that they know absolutely nothing about that someone else has used. When we work with the Georgia Department of Corrections, and we are in talks with them in trying to help ex-offenders or people that we call returning citizens to find employment, one of the things that we know that when they can find jobs and when they can get adequate housing, recidivism is reduced drastically. any legislation that you would put into place that would preclude this population from having the ability to find a job and take care of their families will make our work more difficult and will probably drive up crime even more. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Y'all want to say anything?
Definitely. How you doing? My name is Dexter Wood. I am one of the community health workers that work at the Center for Working Families. Part of what my job consists of is not only providing health information as far as access to health care, disseminating information about living a more prudent and healthier lifestyle, but I also partner with other organizations in the community to disseminate various different community organizing efforts, advocacy efforts, and resources in the community. I do have a felony. I committed a crime when I was 18, and I'm 27 now. I'm in school, but there's been a series of barriers for me just living life, getting an apartment in my name, finding some place to live, and basically sustaining any kind of work. No matter how much good deed I do in community or how I present myself to the public eye, as soon as they run my background and they see my record, it creates a barrier for me doing any of the work that I enjoy doing and that I'm most effective at doing. I have always been a long-time advocate for just any kind of injustice and people having resources or the information at their fingertips, but it's going to be extremely difficult for me to do what I'm doing now if this bill is passed, because I won't be able to disseminate that information to the people that I serve in community. And it ranges all types of community. And if I tried to find any other source of work, whether it's, a trade like electrician or mechanics or IT work, I wouldn't be able to even do that because I can't go in anybody's home as an electrician or a plumber or anything of that magnitude because of this bill. I'm not, undermining the severity of some situations of individuals that are repeat offenders, but, call me old school. I think it's just common sense of the courts to know that if somebody has a history and it's the 3-strike rule of doing an act of crime and you continue to let them be out on the street doing that same crime, then that shouldn't be you shouldn't set the precursor for every person that has done some things in their past and trying to rectify those things that they've done in their past and hasn't been a repeat offender all the time from doing their job and continuing to do their job. So that's all I have to offer.
Thank you, sir. You must be Rodney.
Roddy, yes, sir. Yeah, I'm Roddy. All right. Good morning to everyone. Is my mic on? All right, good morning to everyone. My name is Roddy Longino, and I am also a participant and a member of the Center for Working Families. I'm just going to give a kind of brief introduction of my story. I am an ex-offender. I have a felony committed in 1990. Haven't committed any felonies since. I've been 19 years now. I have a family of 4 children. I'm married. And I am a law-abiding citizen, and I am a huge member of the community. So I believe in change, I believe in redirection, and I also believe in rehabilitation. You got those that come home and try to do the right thing. Then you got guys that still go back out there and, and make dumb moves and make dumb mistakes. What I'm an independent contractor because I had a lot of barriers in terms of getting employment to feed my family. Didn't make no excuses. Didn't come up with no different reasons. You can't tell a 6 or 7 month old baby, daddy can't work because he got a background. You got to bring milk and Pampers. And my dad always taught me to be a provider, so I took the initiative to start my own business. With that said in mind, I came to the Center for Working Families, unemployed, father of 4. I had some issues with my driver's license at first. Took advantage of the fatherhood program in terms of just being responsible and holding guys accountable for what they do in life. So I took it upon myself to hire ex-offenders with my service that I have, but also try to get guys that are accountable. I try to get young ladies that are accountable who want a second chance. And this bill would be detrimental to it'll be directly to me because I'm an independent contractor. I know the cost of the background checks. I can see the gentleman here have done his research and look from the high end and low end of the background checks. That affects me directly. And some insurance company, because I got workers' comp insurance, that'll make the insurance go up as well. And it's kind of tough for a guy like me. I only have like a small business and trying to grow my business. So that'll affect me directly as well. But at the same time, I try to be a great guy in terms of character, guys or young ladies that I may hire as a team member to do the type of jobs and work I do. Not only do I do commercial cleaning, also do residential. So this will definitely be directly hidden on terms of the residential cleaning. With all due respect for what the young lady experienced, my heart goes out to you. I really do. That was a very horrific experience, and I can begin to imagine what I would do if I was in that position and my little daughter was in jeopardy like that. But yeah, you do have some of those guys that come out and still mean no harm, and it still mean a lot of harm, and still try to get over on the system instead of just go do your job and do your work. Some people try to harm people, and it's not a day that I don't go by knowing that I have to carry the label of being an ex-offender, reentry candidate, or whatever the label that may be put up under me. I simply made some bad choices when I was young. Thank God Almighty, I was able to overcome those barriers. And my job and my ministry is about making all my wrongs right. So I was in the position, put in a position with the help of Center for Working Families and Annie Casey Foundation to start my entrepreneur businesses so that I can help inspire and encourage other people. But like I say, this bill right here would be definitely detrimental. Thank y'all so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions for those three?
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment? And to Roddy, I'll call you by your first name because I'm not sure I can pronounce your last name. And Mr. Wood, thank you for your testimony. You know, the intent of this bill is not to harm folks who have turned their lives around. And the stories that you tell are evidence that you have done that. And but our intent is not to hurt you and to hurt folks who have done that, but to stop the bad guys who have not. And so as we weigh protecting the citizens of our state from those who would do harm versus admirable men like yourself who have turned your life around, it's a difficult decision. And I can assure you that as we go through this legislative process, we'll do everything we can to protect those who have turned their lives around and are good citizens and are providing a good service, along with weighing it with trying to protect our citizens as well too.
It's a very fine line, sir.
It
like
is a fine line.
If I may say, that's a fine line. But what I was saying, the only thing I want to comment on is just one last comment, please. Thank you. Is that if the person who providing, I want to make this question is to you, I guess. If the person who providing a service, you're asking them to take background checks, also with the employees, or just the people that's been allowed to come into the house?
Well, it would. The answer to the question is yes. You would be required to do a background check on yourself in case you were asked by a potential customer. If I was going to hire you and I wanted to know, Roddy, would you provide evidence that of a background check on yourself?
Yes, sir.
And so yes, the answer would be yes. You would be required to do that so that you can provide that information to your customer.
I understand.
And one final comment, just so you'll know, and it's none of my business the felonies that you committed in the past. What we're trying to zero in on is the really bad felonies. If you passed a couple of bad checks, if you got in a bar fight, you know, we're not looking for that. We're looking for people who.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, you know, if you run my record will tell you that I have an aggravated assault charge, and it really always put most agencies back because part of what I do and what makes me so effective is the fact that I connect with people and I have to engage with people.
So whether it was work I've done with other agencies around HIV prevention and the work I do in these communities around community organizing and health dissemination, I can't go into somebody else's house for it. Their risk is if somebody says the wrong thing to me, I'm going to fly off the handle and do something violent to them. And I tell people, well, I grew up in a neighborhood that is extremely, hostile. And, I'm not going to make any excuses for decisions I made because I made those decisions. But there's also the reality that, that we have an inadequate court system that passes some people through the system and gives them ill advice. You have some individuals that actively were defending themselves. I don't like to call out folks in their homophobia, but there are a lot of homophobic people out there. And so, me taking a measure to defend myself only, resulted in me having a felony on my record. And me always being labeled as an offender and somebody that they need to watch out for. But you do my track record, I'm the first person on the front line to connect with people and make sure that whether you're a senior citizen or whoever, you're going to get services or you're going to get my aid or my help. And so that's always going to be a barrier for the work that I'm doing because I'm passionate about working with people, but you're going to look at me as a threat because of what my background is.
Kevin has a question, and then we're going to get to Ron Boardman and Ashley Wyden. Oh, I see. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'll make this brief, and I'll change it from a question to a couple of quick comments. To you, ma'am, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name when you came up. If there are errors in criminal records, there are ways to correct those. You can go down to the courthouse, get yourself fingerprinted, and get that removed from the record. So that's something you can deal with. And I guess my concern, while I agree with what Representative Peake said, and I'm glad to have you all here and glad you all have become productive members of society, is a member of this committee is a member of the House and is somebody who is the father of two. If I have to err on one side or the other, I'm going to err on family safety. And if that happens to catch folks and if there is a problem that causes you, I'm very sorry that happens. But I am much more concerned with Ms. Scott's situation, preventing something like that from happening, than I am. And doesn't mean I'm not concerned about you, but I'm willing to run the risk that there are a few people who are going to get caught. If I can prevent one time something like that happening, I think we got to do it.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you for having us, sir.
A little bit of background, I guess, just briefly. Is this on? Little red lights on, but I'm the legal director for the Georgia Justice Project. The Georgia Justice Project organization has been around for about 22 years in Atlanta that works with indigent criminals. And what we try to do is provide a holistic service. We have social workers that work when we accept a case or a client. The social worker and an attorney are paired to work with that individual to try to address the issues that cause them to be in the criminal justice system and try to overcome those barriers. We also own a landscaping company that once at a certain point your clients have done a certain level of participation and shown what they're capable of doing, can work in that company as a way of getting that first job to show their next employer, I showed up on time, I did what I was supposed to do to try to move back and to become a productive member of society. The national average for recidivism in the country is around 73%. We have a 16% recidivist rate. So what we do works very well. Myself, I was a homicide prosecutor here in Atlanta for 7 years. And basically, after doing that for a long period of time, recognized that what I was doing was putting a Band-Aid on the end of a problem. Serving people, representing people who had had tragic loss was an unbelievably fulfilling job. But at the same time, I wanted to try to see if there's a way that I could prevent some of this stuff from happening instead of being there at the end. And the Georgia Justice Project asked me to come on board, and that's what I did. So that's what I do now. Some of the issues that I want to raise, and I really appreciate your honesty in what you're saying about how you're going to look at it and how you're going to err and who it's going to affect. But I want you to look at this bill and ask yourself whether this bill would do that. A manslaughter conviction, which is what this individual had, is not a 7 deadly sin. So he would not be in the adjusted provision of this bill, would not be a part of it. And I have great concerns about what we're concerned with. My sister and my niece and nephew live in the neighborhood that this happened in. So I grew up in Macon. I'm a Maconite and transplanted here because of my wife, because you go where your wife wants to go. So that's what happens. Right? So, yeah. So that's where I live now is here. And visit in Macon as much as I can, visit my sister and her family. So I think we have to look at the bill and decide, okay, what does it do? What does it want to do, and what does it do? A couple of things that are important. The GCIC information, the Georgia Criminal Information Center, is where criminal records are kept for the state of Georgia. And there are big problems with that center, and we're trying to address some of those. We're working with that. And the idea that you just go down and get your fingerprints done, it's just not that easy. That's kind of the way people talk about it. But that's a 9-month process, even when it gets done. So it's not something that happens quickly when you submit your fingerprints for changes. In 2004, the GCIC was asked to go through their records for 24,000 cases and to find dispositions in those cases. They found dispositions in 4,000 of them. So all those records are incomplete. It's something that the court system doesn't do well in turning those information over to GCIC. It's not their fault, but that's the situation. And then in this bill, one of the problems from the way I understand it is that you're not required to do a GCIC, that you could go through the internet. Every one of the internet criminal background checks I have ever seen, at the top of it says, the information contained in this cannot be verified. Because if you submit John Williams, it's going to pull information about John Williams. And it's going to pull information close to that date of birth. It's constant that we have people come into our office. They say an employer won't hire me because they say I have a felony that I don't have. We run a GCIC, the actual state-authorized form, and it's not on there. And then we submit that to the employer and show them that the information that you got off the internet just isn't accurate. We understand it's the easy way to do it, but that's not an accurate way to identify someone's true history. The other problem with that is that GCIC cannot give you information about other state arrests. It will indicate on it in small language that it's a multi-state offender, but you have to go through a separate process to get other states' information. So that is one of the things that I think it needs to be looked at if this bill is going to go forward, is what type of information can someone rely on in not hiring somebody? You know, what requirements are going to be set for that notion? Another important thing is that a significant part of this legislation is already there. I mean, as was stated here, the employer's been sued. We have laws on the books that allow for somebody to be sued in this particular circumstance. The criminal laws that are there that can be used. The DAs can look at certain things to do. This bill doesn't prevent anything from happening. I mean, arguably in this case, would this man have done anything different? If this bill was in effect and he had run the background check on this individual since he knew he had a criminal record, would he have hired him anyway? And apparently he would have, stating very callously in this situation, can't believe he said that to you, you know, good help's hard to find. So what would the effect of this bill, what would this bill do to prevent the tragedy that's happened? And I just don't think it would do anything. We already have laws on the books that require people who are going to work with the elderly, who work in the children, they have to have criminal background checks. And if they have any types of felonies, any felony, or they've had any crime involving the elderly or a child, regardless of the nature of the crime, they can't work in that industry. So we have a lot of things that are already set up to prevent this type of activity from taking place and addressing it. And I just don't think that this bill, by its nature, would do anything additional to that. It's just going to place another barrier or another issue there that won't prevent anything from happening, I don't think. So I think that's the concern. What's really going to happen is it coming out of honest motivation? Of course, it definitely is. Is it wanting to address a problem? Of course it is. But does it address it? Is there a way that this bill is actually going to prevent something like this from happening? And honestly, I just don't think there's a way that it will do it. The rules are already set up. There's laws that already apply to these types of issues. And we have to look at the recidivist notions in general. The Legal Action Center, which is a national organization that looks at reentry issues and laws around the country, already ranks Georgia as the 4th worst state as far as barriers to employment and reentry when somebody comes out of working. George W. Bush in his 2004 State of the Union address acknowledged that if we know that if people who come out of prison, and he estimated at that time that 600,000 people a year come out of the federal and state prisons, that if they can't find work and they can't find housing, they're going to reoffend. So I think what we want to try to do is to create laws and issues that protect everybody as much as they can, but at the same time allow people to work so that we don't have these types of barriers. And while I definitely respect the intent of the legislation and understand why we feel that there might be a need, I just don't believe that the legislation will do anything additional to the laws that we already have in place and that are working.
Chairman, but when you put a lawyer, especially a former prosecutor, on the committee, you're going to get a few questions, and I'll try and keep this to as much of a comment as I can, because I think it's important when you raise some of these issues that we address them. First of all, with regard to the private checks, there is, as you well know, a letter that's required to be sent out allowing the applicant an opportunity to contest their conviction, and the bill provides very specifically that it has to be someone who has been convicted. So I think that addresses both of those initial concerns that you raised. I cannot for the life of me figure out how you think that suing would have helped Mrs. Scott. This does something very different than provide for a civil sanction, although it provides for one of those. It says you may not hire these people. So it says something very different. And since you're at the Ag Committee, let me give you an analogy. People want to indict the entire agriculture state in Georgia because of one thing that they did in Blakely. Most people are good actors. Most people follow the law. And you're right, you're not going to stop this scumbag who did not have the decency to say anything more than, I'm more concerned about my business than I am about the safety of my customers. But I believe that most people will follow the law. Most people will conduct these background checks. And if it turns up that somebody's been convicted of aggravated child molestation, I believe that both the employer and certainly the customer have a right to know that and have a right not to have them come in their home. And you're asking, how it would help. It will keep these people from being in somebody's home. Now, if you want to talk to me about a way to have somebody apply to the person whose home it is and ask for permission to come in anyway, I could understand something like that. But I absolutely don't understand how you think that suing is the answer to prevent a situation like what happened to Mrs. Scott.
I don't think it's the answer. I think that's the law. But in this circumstance, if you think that we have a lot of employers out there who do background checks, and most of them do. If you look around the state and you ask employers, do you do background checks? They say yes. Do they hire people who are convicted child molesters? No. That's just not a common practice. And if you believe that's a common practice, that we have a slew of businesses who are doing background checks and are hiring aggravated child molesters and rapists and saying that's okay, I'm willing to bring on these people who I'm going to then be sued for because of placing people in danger, that's just unrealistic. It doesn't happen. If you want to provide any statistics, you're welcome to suggest that that's the case. But that's just not a problem. And this bill doesn't change that. If people are going to hire people with criminal background checks, criminal histories, they're going to do it. There's already provisions for that. People already do this. And to suggest that because of a Fair Practices Act provision, that's going to make people who already ignore it decide to come into that provision, I think is unrealistic. And it definitely doesn't look at the way businesses practice today.
Well, if it were up to me, in addition to, and again, you're talking about not 10-1-933. I keep telling you about 10-1 ag01110932, which is a prohibition. It's not a you can be sued. I'd be perfectly comfortable with somebody who violates this provision being accountable for a misdemeanor or a felony. If you send somebody into the home knowing that they've been convicted of aggravated child molestation, I'd be perfectly happy with you facing criminal sanctions. It is up to an employer, and I run background checks. I work for a company, and you're right. I'm not going to hire somebody who's an aggravated child molester to send them into somebody's home. That's my right as an employer. And what we're talking about here, one of the things government is supposed to do is protect people when they're not able to protect themselves. There is no way that Ms. Scott could have possibly known about this person. And I think it's incumbent upon an employer, and quite frankly, I think any employer who's not running criminal background checks on everybody, whether they're a desk person or not, is being irresponsible for themselves. But certainly when we're talking about exposing the public, and this is a story, not the story. It's a story of what happened to somebody, and to suggest that because there's a provision in there that has to do with unfair practices, if you want to move that out and replace it with a criminal sanction for anybody that violates the statute, I'd be perfectly comfortable with that, because you're right. I don't think that's going to stop them, but if they thought they were going to jail, I think they might think twice about it.
There's already those provisions in the law. DAs can look at that and address people and bring actions against people who do that. I just think this legislation is superfluous. With all due respect, I think definitely trying to do something very important to protect people. I just think we always have to look at whether or not what we're passing is going to achieve the goal that we're asking for it to do. And I just don't think that this will do that. I appreciate your time very much. You don't have anything? Okay.
Well, that's what happens. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Ashley Widener. Is that on? Representing the Conditioned Air Association of Georgia. My comments are just really, a prudent businessman is going to do this. The majority of our members do this already. You know, our members go in, their companies go in homes frequently with heating and air conditioning. Your businessmen who are not prudent, they're not going to follow the law no matter what we do. But our concerns today are really more barriers of business in the state and creating another barrier to small business people. And those are just our simple comments, and I'll keep it brief. I know that the hour is late.
Stan Jones of the Nelson Mullins Law Firm. We represent Visiting Nurse Health Systems, Amedisys Home Health, the food banks, Georgia Center for Nonprofits. I think several of your comments already have addressed some of the issues we'd be concerned about, but I just wanted to flag out loud that I'd like to be sure that the licensure idea you mentioned actually in every instance covers the background checks so that the health businesses in particular can continue going into homes. Obviously, you got nurses and licensed practical nurses but you also have social workers, physical therapists, some of the private duty nursing companies that you raised would have a wider range of employees. So I just wanted to say we would welcome an opportunity to work with you in the next few days to be sure that the exceptions you're talking about work. There may also be some issues for volunteers. The 1,500 nonprofit service entities will have folks that are not always employees, and that might be something to talk about too. Thank you. I know you would.
Thank you, sir. I know a lot of y'all are sitting back there wondering why in the world the Ag Committee is dealing with this kind of stuff. But if you'll keep reading, it is agriculture and consumer affairs. So a lot of the bills we've been getting this year are consumer issues. So thank y'all for bearing through this. Doc had a question for
one question.
Alan.
Okay. Representative Peake, on line 21, it says here that background investigation on any employee have been employed for fewer than 10 years. And you heard a couple of gentlemen a while ago, one of them said he was 18 when he had his problem, now he's 27, that's been 9 years. The other one said over here, said it's been 19 years. You have any way to put anything in there that if you do find a problem, that it was done 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, he's forgiven?
Representative Max, I'd be more than willing to entertain that. Folks who have given a proven track record that they have been rehabilitated, yes, they should be given some credit for that, and so I would be more than glad to entertain that and look forward to maybe chatting with you further about it.
The 10 years is what you thought would be.
The 10 years was okay. They've proven themselves. Yeah, I mean that was kind of the intent. Was if they've been employed with someone for 10 years and prove to their employer that they're trustworthy, then maybe there could be an exemption for them. Yes, sir.
Alan, you have anything?
Yes, sir. If I could just give one final comment, and if it's okay with the chairman, I think we've got some more work to do on this. I would love to have another opportunity to come before you with some changes that we put in from the suggestions that we've gotten from the groups. If I can just leave a couple thoughts with the committee. A couple of the questions that have come up have been with folks that they can't find work if this bill goes into place. Just keep in mind that this is limiting the scope to only in-home services. Very, very small segment of our economy. I understand people may be electricians and plumbers and have skills, and I understand that. But the argument that folks can't find work, I don't think is a valid one in this case. And the second point that Representative Littis made so much better than I ever could, because he's such a better speaker than I am, is weighing the cost benefit, and I think that's a valid issue that we have to address here. Is yes, there are some concerns about the cost, but we have got to weigh those versus the benefit of protecting our citizens, and I hope the committee would take that into consideration.
Representative Peake, I think Kevin has some suggestions that, and y'all need to get with Wayne, because you see there's a lot of questions going on. Thank you for everybody that came and testified. We will take this up when we get some language worked out. Ms. Scott, thank you for coming today. I apologize to you personally for us having to deal with this kind of stuff, and hope everything works out with your daughter and your babysitter, and good Lord will get you through it. But thank you again for coming, and Alan, thank you for bringing this.
Thank you, Chairman Cole.
Nobody has anything else. We'll adjourn and work on this one.
Thank you.